So I'm Jeff. I founded the CMA, the Critical Minerals Association, with Kirsty in 2020. And just as you were saying, Sarah, we felt there was a need for something to be done in this space. So we took a shot. And in fact, it was a government official who said it would never work, but at least you're dumb enough to try. And I proved him right. I was dumb enough to try it, but it did work. So that's good. So let's start, as we don't have much time. And then Kirsty, anything to add?
No, go ahead, Jeff.
Perfect. So Kirsty is definitely the boss. Good. So Critical Minerals Association. So we set it up as an association that's basically advocacy about bringing together the critical mineral sector with an idea of trying to unite the industry, generate a collective voice, and then trying to improve societal perceptions of the mineral sector in its entirety of the supply chain. And the reason for that is because obviously you can't deliver the green economy, you can't deliver the next economy without critical minerals. At COP26, something was said that we're digging ourselves into an early grave. I would argue that perhaps we have to dig ourselves out of one and build more. We have to mine more, so we have more critical minerals, so we can deliver the wind turbines, the electric vehicles, etc. So we're just quickly, we're set up in a way that this is kind of our structure. So we're very much industry led, with the idea that we need it to be industry's voice, because it's industry that has the issues, industry that has the concerns and the opportunities, and it's their position that needs to be heard by the decision makers. So we work through working groups, and those working groups are basically led by industry chairs. They generate work, and then we try and make that into something that can be influential. So when I was speaking to Sarah and Rose about today, we were discussing perhaps we could talk about tips and tricks on engaging with governments and the lobbying sector. So influencing the decision makers. So if we skip on. So lobbying is easy, saying the right thing to the right person at the right time. It's that simple. But actually, it's actually quite tricky. So to deliver those 3 sentences, you have to do a lot of work, and you have to understand a lot of bits of moving landscape and make sure that you get to the right person. So different points of contact. So in the UK, we'll use the UK because it's easy. You've got government, so government affairs, Whitehall, which is also probably government affairs, and then parliament, so parliamentary affairs. So different strategies on the way that you engage, but you also have trade associations, internal caucuses. So the Conservative Party has a multiple, the One Nation group, you've got the Green Energy group, you've got the Libertarians, you've got IEA on the trade association side, you've got APPGs, cross-party bodies that will influence, and then you've got foreign governments with their own agendas, also lobbying and trying to push through opportunities. So in reality, there are lots of different points of contact if you want to deliver one message into the political system. So with that in mind, saying the right thing. So I took one of those circles and we went to Whitehall. So government affairs. So if you look at Whitehall, there's 6 different departments. Each of them have got their own objectives. Each have got budget constraints. Political priorities are different, and then on top of that, you have ministers who have their own personal objectives as well. At the same time, you've got counter lobbies going in, trying to discredit what you're saying. You've got other industry actors who may or may not be aligned to your message, and you have the geopolitics of the day. So at the moment, of course, we have the war that's going on in Ukraine. So all of that plays a role. So when it gets to saying the right thing, what you need to do is you need to find the issue that transcends all those individuals. You need to, so in the UK, for instance, if you can tie your message to net zero or to the green economy or to leveling up, you'll have a lot more chance of being heard, because that hits key cross Whitehall interdepartmental objectives. And so the way that you engage in that is kind of key. And I would say on this slide, there's so much more, but I'm trying to rush through the language that we use. And we find the biggest, or I have found, and I'm sure others on this call as well would argue that often the government and the mining sector and the processing sector have been trying to push in the same direction, but because they use different discourse, different language, they don't often seem to get along. That is changing, and there is a greater understanding, but that discourse and the way that things are being presented is often being one of the problems, or not presented in some cases. And just to give, so when I was writing speeches for a few people, the language that you use, so whether you use Franco-Latin, very emotional in the way that it's presented, very good at pulling on the heartstrings, building that emotional support, very useful in certain circumstances, but when you use Germanic, very short, straight to the point language, very good for fighting your corner when you're talking about statistics, or you're trying to get a hard-hitting point home. So the way that you engage and the language that you use is absolutely important when you're trying to engage with governments. And frankly, you need to understand who you're talking to and what language best represents or cuts through to them. So if we go on to the next one. Finding the right person. This is a mapping exercise. So I would say that the first thing to realize is that the right person is not always the person who's the most interested or the easiest person to find. And most of the time, it's definitely not that person. But to understand who the right person is, you first have to understand yourself, what you're trying to achieve. Your objectives may be brilliant. It may be the right thing to do. But if you're presenting those to someone who doesn't have the influence, it's not in their, it isn't in their portfolio, or they simply don't have the power to push that up the chain of command, it becomes incredibly difficult for that person to act. So what are you trying to achieve? Where does it fit in the political system? And who can help you get what you're trying to achieve into the right person? So sometimes that's understanding who you know and their sphere of influence and what they can and can't do. Or you could go the other way and you could find a minister and you could say, right, outside of the minister's Whitehall team or parliamentary staff, who can influence that person? Are they a member of a think tank? Do they have close friends? When I was back doing foreign affairs, there was something in Parliament called the Frat Pack, which is about 5 different MPs. They're all best mates. They lived together when they weren't at home. And if you spoke to one of them, all 5 of them would back you. So nice and clean politics for you there. So finding the right person, and then it's also about mapping and understanding. So is someone on maneuvers? So sometimes you can see from the outside, or if you have contacts on the inside, you can see if someone's trying to make a move, whether they're trying to get further up the chain, whether they're trying to destabilize the situation politically, and understanding that and understanding who's doing that and why they're doing that enables you to see if your point can be fed into that and whether it's beneficial to be or not. And then I would finally say it's building relationships is the most important thing. When Sarah often asks me what I do, or people outside of, kind of, what do you do, Jeff? I have cups of tea with people. And that's basically my job. I have cups of tea and I build relationships. It's business development, it's not sales. So we go on to the final bit, which is when is the right time? And timing is absolutely everything. So in the UK and Canada and Western world often, and there are, what's the government objectives? Trying to time your messages and the way that you engage at the right time to government objectives is critical. So we did a lot of work leading into COP26 because the timing was right, but there was no point in doing it in October, because you have to understand in COP26, you work back from COP and you work back and you actually have to have your things in by May, June to actually have any influence by the time COP rolls around. So understanding the government agenda and trying to fit things in there what stage of the political cycle are we in? So Australia's just gone to an election. So no point in doing anything right now. America's in the midterm battles. That's November. So you can do some work now, but in reality, the eyes are not in there. It's kind of more focused on elections, as you can see in the press. So understanding where we are in the political cycle and where people's eyes are or interests are. What are external issues? Like I said, COP26 was a big one. And what political business is forthcoming. So if you know that the government is about to release its critical mineral strategy, you have to be involved in trying to influence that now, which is what we're doing, but also around budget time and other bits of information you might get. And what is the policy timeframe? So understanding how the political system works. The UK is relatively simple. Western world is relatively simple, but in other parts of the world, understanding how the policy system works and how long that takes and where you can influence and what the chances are of things progressing. Understanding that, understanding where and what the time frame is on that allows you to decide when to pull the trigger in terms of your engagement. So I'd finally say on when is the right time, as I was told multiple times by the Chief Whip, events, dear boy, events. And a week is a long time in politics, and at the moment a day feels like a long time in politics. So try and, if you're very good, you can plot what potential events might be happening, and you can try and work your way around those and understanding what the fallout will be and try and work those. So that's when the right time is. There is so much more, but what I would say is we're on the right side of history in the critical mineral sector. We can't build the next 100 years of industry without critical minerals, and it is imperative that everyone is doing their part to push that message. What I would say is the way that that message is delivered is going to be key, because mining in the UK has never been seen as a vote winner. So we need to be smart in the way that we engage, in the way that we inform decision makers. And part of that is about talking to government, and part of that is trying to influence media and society to be more aware of what's in your mobile phone or what's in your electric vehicle. So yes, that's when is the right time. Kirsty?
Yep, so Jeff's gone over how we influence government, and I guess the next side of that is what types of things are we trying to influence government about. So we work with a lot of our members and build some of that information. I think ESG is a really important topic for the Critical Minerals Association. We want to see critical minerals being extracted and processed responsibly and working towards a just transition. So last year, one of our ESG working groups put together a ESG paper called A Blueprint for Responsible Sourcing of Critical Minerals. And this was influenced by organizations such as Satala, SLK Consulting. It's been viewed over 1,000 times, praised by industry, and most importantly, thanks to Jeff's lobbying skills, it's made its way through government. So we're also pleased to see that in BEIS's net zero strategy, not only were critical minerals mentioned on an entire page, which was the first time that we'd seen government publications featuring critical minerals. A lot of the recommendations from the ESG paper were mapped into this as well. So for example, the importance of establishing an enabling environment for critical minerals, working with industry to promote innovation and investment. So yeah, when we started the CMA in 2020, a lot of critical minerals weren't considered by government. So it's great to see how far we're coming and how much this can continue to go. So following up from the ESG paper, what we wanted to do was to try and delve into some of those recommendations that the ESG working group had put together and start to influence the government critical mineral strategy by delving into some of those recommendations by organizing workshops with UK government. And we organized 4 of these early in the year. The first one was Access to Innovation, Capital and Finance, which was expertly moderated by Sarah Gordon, and covered a number of topics such as how investors are being driven by ESG considerations, but also about the gap between how critical minerals extraction and processing is necessary for technologies needed to bring the world towards net zero. But at the same time, there's little incentive to invest in critical minerals in terms of climate change mitigation. So there was an interesting gap that was highlighted, and we brought together a number of finance and innovation stakeholders. We did a session on a global ESG standard, which was chaired by our ESG working group chair, Aldo Panini. And this brought together ESG standard representatives such as ICMM, Towards Sustainable Mining, the Global Trading Standard. And one thing that came up quite a lot was the importance of verification and assurance and key issues. So how that could potentially be developed in the future, but also that a lot of participants felt that even though there were a lot of multitudes of ESG standards, that these were converging. And the group also highlighted the importance of governments collaborating internationally so that they don't develop policies in silos. One of the sessions was on UK planning and permitting, so highlighting the importance of solid planning and permitting processes, not just in terms of facilitating investment and speeding up those processes, but also in considering how international best practice from ESG should be understood by local planning authorities. And our final workshop was on a talent pipeline. So we raised the importance of building a talent pipeline for critical mineral supply chains. ESG can be very technical, and many people in ESG have STEM backgrounds, but we've seen that there's a decline in young people choosing to study subjects such as geosciences, mineral engineering, and Ben Lepley and Lucy Crane, who are the chairs of the working group, chaired this meeting, and it brought together lots of different stakeholders. So we included organizations such as the Geological Society, IOM3, Women in Mining, Social Mobility Foundation, Natural History Museum, universities. And I think it's really important to bring together all these stakeholders because everyone's doing a lot of really important work in this. And so in this, we raised awareness of the issues with the UK government, highlighted how disciplines like geoscience, metallurgy, and engineering should be featured into the UK government's current strategy around green jobs, because they've got a lot of initiatives on green jobs at the moment, but they don't necessarily feature these disciplines. And if you're interested in finding out more, we've got a paper which is on our website with a number of ways in which industry and individuals can get involved in pushing this forwards. So these are some of the papers that we've completed. In terms of next steps, we're organising an anniversary event in Parliament to launch ESG paper from last year. We had to push that back because of COVID, and we're also writing a follow-up paper this year on ESG in July. Continuing engagement with different ESG stakeholders. So if you'd like to get in touch and share your work with us, we'd really like to hear from you. So please do. I have to give a shout out to our members, without whom we would not be here today. So thank you for being part of the association. We've grown from 6 to 26 members in the past 2 years, and we're looking forward to continuing to build the association. And these are our contact details. If you'd like to find more, then please do get in touch. Our website has got a lot of information about the work that we've been doing and our reports. Equally, if you'd like to learn more about public affairs and are interested in potential work opportunities, get in touch as well, work experience opportunities. Yeah, we really hope this presentation has been helpful. I think one of the key takeaways is that it takes a lot of time to build relationships, and if you want to engage with government, you have to invest in this and take the time to make it happen. And if you do think that government should be doing more or should be doing things differently, please do support us in getting these collective messages across to government, and to see if we can help support the global ESG agenda. So thanks for listening. Thanks Rose and Sarah for inviting us to join today, and we're looking forward to the rest of the conference.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kirsty and Jeff. Absolutely brilliant. Round of applause to both of you. I have to say, Jeff, I mean, I always learn something when we're talking, but that was just brilliant, giving us that insight as to how on earth to, I guess, even begin to think about navigating government and Whitehall. I mean, I've been working with part of it over the last couple of years, and I learned so much just then. So thank you for that.
Pleasure. It's well, someone knows something, which is good. Every day is a learning day in this space. Yes.
And I think with that as well, lots of us, I think, can identify with the fact that if somebody tells you that you can't do something, or something's impossible, then that kind of, that chip in your shoulder really digs in, doesn't it? And makes you go, okay, I'll show you. I'll show you how to make this actually work. And so just a massive congratulations to all three of you now with Olympia as well for what you've created, because it is creating waves and it's making a difference, which is absolutely brilliant. So
Thanks.
thank you very much, Kirsty and Jeff. Brilliant. Round of applause. Great.